Tell me what happened today.
Oh, I arrived first thing in the morning, again, requested by the district attorney to come in to answer.
And this was a
questions.
meeting set when you were here, but you couldn't tell us when. This was set after your last visit.
That's correct. And I will sort of do the same thing again this time. I will be going back again for the 17th time next week.
When you come out and talk, if you're the public-facing piece of the iceberg, where do you draw the line in terms of what we don't know underneath?
Well, I think there's a lot that you don't know. A lot of the information you've read about, you've heard about over the course of how many years that Donald has been entangled in all of these various investigations. But what the DA is currently doing is they're really honing in on micro parts of various documents and emails, text messages, et cetera, and into different aspects of where they're setting up the case. You know, I've used so many different examples. If you think about it, they are now into the minutia, the real minutia. Before we started, let's say, with the book, and then the next meeting was about the chapter, and then about the paragraph. My next meeting, I would say, is probably going to be more about a specific line. That's how close that they are to finishing their investigation as it relates to me.
Last time you were here, we talked about Mark Pomerantz's book, and he wrote about the need to corroborate with the kind of evidence you're talking about, documents and emails, a star witness like yourself's testimony. Is that where Bragg is?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, they're really honing down into the minutia and setting things up for their determination of whether they will or they will not take this case forward.
What do you think?
Well, look, I'm not a prognosticator, though every time that I have been on this show and have done so, I have been right. I don't think it looks good for the former guy at all. Can you
confirm that it is broader than the hush money case? That
I really don't want to. You know that I would love to sit here with you for an hour and go through every single aspect and let your viewers in on what's going on behind the doors, because I'm a true believer in transparency. And like I said, out of respect for the district attorney's office, their investigation, and ultimately holding this man accountable. It's not just him, it's multiple people accountable for their dirty deeds, their improper actions. I'm going to refrain from doing what I normally would like to do, and that's to just release it all.
You choose your words carefully. Are his children among the other people potentially being held accountable?
Right. So if I can once again deflect from your question.
Well, you deliberately didn't just say him.
Right. And there are multiple people. Listen, there are a lot of people in Donald's orbit that every person that has been in that orbit has unfortunately seen this similar types of repercussions, not as bad as what happened to me, but they're all seeing similar type of repercussions where their life just gets turned upside down for his benefit.
One of the public-facing data points we had was this articulation from Mark Pomerantz's book of how much faster Tish James's office was able to consume and analyze and metabolize all of the evidence. Do you feel, one, if you share that assessment, and two, do you feel like Bragg's office is now on par with Tish James's office?
So to be fair to Alvin Bragg, he is the new DA. Tish James has remained the Attorney General since the beginning of the investigation, and there's been no interruption. Like all of the viewers and like everybody, we really would like to have seen the indictment out already or the termination of it, one way or the other. We would like to have seen some closure. Alvin Bragg is operating at Alvin Bragg's pace, and while we may not agree with it, we may not appreciate it, it's his office, it's his pace, and at the end of the day, he's either going to get the accolades or he's going to get the jeers from people.
Do you have any insight, whether you can share it or not, I guess would be the second part of the question, but do you now understand why he dismissed the people working on this case when he first arrived?
I'd prefer not to, again, comment on that. One thing I can say is that the team that's currently there that I am meeting with, they're really, and I've said this before, they're really knowledgeable and they have a great grasp on all of the facts surrounding this case.
Alan Weisselberg has sort of been like this white whale, right? Oh, now that he's at Rikers, he'll talk. Is there any indication that there's been any movement around what Alan Weisselberg is willing to talk about?
Again, that I don't know. We don't talk about other aspects of their investigation.
So you don't know when you're helping them where different pieces come from necessarily?
Well, of course, I have an idea based upon the questions that are being posed to me. But again, out of really respect for the prosecution, plus I'm sure Donald's watching this right now, or at least his team is, right? He loves you. At the end of the day, and I don't know why. I mean, because considering you're so lovely to him, right? It's a love affair.
I don't actually care about Donald Trump. I care about anyone who damages democracy and keeps doing it.
And I feel exactly the same.
I think the choice in American politics is between a party that has greenlit and enabled an autocrat who's hell-bent on destroying our democracy and everything that is fighting and safeguarding it.
And how many times have I said, even on this show, that I don't want to see Donald indicted, prosecuted, convicted, because I fundamentally disagree or I have an animus to him as an individual. I want to see him indicted, prosecuted, and incarcerated simply for the illegal, immoral, unethical, unconstitutional actions that he has committed.
Are you confident as you sit here today that the line of questioning, and you describe documents and emails that have been gathered, point toward an imminent indictment of Donald Trump?
Yeah, you're asking the same question. You should be a lawyer in the same way, just using, of course, different verbiage. I don't really want to go into. Let me say once again that based upon my now 16th meeting, things do not look good for him and others.
Barbara McQuade, have you ever called a witness in 16 times for any investigation you were ever a part of?
Nope, not even close.
What might it mean?
Well, I think it means they're very, very seriously considering criminal charges and very seriously considering making Michael Cohen not only a witness, but a key witness in this case. And I think that because when you have a witness who has been convicted of crimes, including crimes that involve false statements, a jury is naturally going to be skeptical of that witness's testimony. And so you need to corroborate that witness even more than you might other witnesses. And so that's why it makes sense to me that they're showing him every document they can find, testing his testimony against the testimony of other witnesses to ensure that it's not just his word that a jury has to believe. He can serve as sort of a narrator, but every fact that he is going to testify to is supported by a check, a bank record, a phone call, or another witness's testimony, so that a jury doesn't need to rely solely on any one witness in the case. My guess is it's that, but 16 really is extraordinary, and it does speak to, as Michael has just said, a level of detail that does, to me, point toward a serious consideration of an indictment. You know, if this case weren't going anywhere, they would have ended after one or two conversations and said, you know, we've decided we're not going forward. To go 16 times really is truly extraordinary, and it sounds like moving toward an indictment.
Suzanne, Michael was nodding while Barbara was talking, so I'm going to stay on this thread here. You understand the documents that at least you've had access to better than anybody. When you marry the documents with his testimony, what is the missing piece? What is, again, to use the iceberg thing, what do you think is under the surface that isn't visible to us but may be available to Alvin Bragg?
Right. I think it's important to draw on what's publicly out there. And I think Mark Pomerantz's book, may have shed some light on that. It's Mark Pomerantz's view, but he talks a lot about Michael in the book. And he says that there was a lot of angst about using Michael. One prosecutor in the group actually didn't want to have anything to do with calling Michael because she just said he's not believable. And I think what they're doing is they're really trying to, as Barbara said, they're trying to get as much corroboration as they can. That may be documents and that may be witnesses that we don't yet know about, that they're still working on, or we know about them, but we don't know if maybe they've had a change of heart. And I think the other thing Michael said, I think it's really important about, because 16, 17 times back is a lot, but this is now Alvin Bragg's case. And a lot of those interviews happened when Cy Vance was the Manhattan DA, and Alvin Bragg, when he got in, I think it was a huge ask to expect him to immediately come in and do a charge. And I think they're going, it wasn't like they were starting again, but I think that Michael had to come in and talk to the investigators that are there so they could get a feel for what Michael Cohen would say. Do they believe him? Is he credible? Is he contradicting other evidence that they might have? I think that that's sort of when I feel like, where are we? I think we've been on the tarmac for a while. Feels like we've been sitting there for years. And maybe it is close, but I think that that's what they're doing, right now. That's sort of the feel I've got for it, piecing together sort of what's out there publicly and having done a close study of Mark Pomerantz's book.